Welcome to the Tourism AI podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things at the intersection of artificial intelligence and tourism. And today I'm very happy to have my friend Gerardo Corro, who is from New Westminster, and he's the executive director there. And I've had a few opportunities now to connect with and talk to Gerardo, and we actually recorded this podcast previously unfortunately at the TIA BC conference, and we had too much background noise at the time. So we're giving it another try. So thank you, first of all, for joining me a second time.
Of course, Peter, I'm very happy to be here.
Listening.
Of course, perfect. So, Tourism New Westminster is the DMO for the city of New West, the first capital and first city of Western Canada. We're located right in the heart of Metro Vancouver, only 25 minutes away, as we like to say in our campaigns. Only 25 minutes away from downtown Vancouver, and it's a medium-sized city. We're about 80,000 people, very urbanized, a lot of history, a lot of culture, a lot of heritage happening around, and amazing food options and many other things. And well, we face many challenges. We have 4 hotels, and we live from the hotel tax, the MRT, mostly. We do have some support, financial support from the municipal government, the federal government, but it's mostly the hotel tax that we get. A destination that has been struggling. Well, every destination struggled through COVID, of course. But then right after COVID, we were not in great shape. So we had to. I took the job 2 years ago, and the organization pretty much has renewed since then. So new board members, new staff from scratch. So we had at some point we almost had no staff. So new executive director. Now we also have a new marketing manager full time, part-time visitor experience coordinator. So that's it. People think we're like 20 people. It's only 2.5. And well, we're going to talk about what we do with AI.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, before we get into what you do with AI, because that's definitely where we're going to go next, but I'm really curious. You mentioned that people think you're a team of 20. You guys have, I would say, just from what I've seen, definitely punch above your weight from, in terms of just the number of people in your organization and the impact that you guys have. So first of all, congratulations to you for a job well done, because it's noticeable. And so can you maybe tell me a little bit about, I guess, how you do that? Maybe AI is part of that, maybe it's not. So I'm just curious, sort of at a broad level, how do you get done as much as you get done?
Well, AI is certainly a part of that, but it's also about being organized and try to prioritize innovation and things with high impact. I mean, it sounds easy, just do it, but it's actually trying to. Okay, I'm gonna tell you how things work in my head. I come from Mexico, and before this, I was the CEO and founder of my own consultancy firm for destinations. So we would develop destinations, marketing plans, strategic plans, and all that. And in Mexico, we work with governments. So the DMOs are pretty much run by governments, and they have 3-year terms. So in Mexico, you have to be pretty quick if you want things happening. Because as one city representative once told me in Mexico, when I was trying to make things happening fast, he told me, well, usually on the first year we're learning. It's a learning curve. The second year we're working. And the third year we get distracted because we have the political campaigns for the next election. And that blew my head out. That was like 15 years ago. So right in my first years as a consultant for destinations. And then I realized that we had to be pretty quick if we wanted things to happen and to make a change. So I learned to work at that pace, and I think I brought that with me to Canada. And here we have the great opportunity to build on these organizations, on these plans, on these structures for the long term. So I am doing that, but at the same time, I'm on that pace where I want to see things happening right away, fast, one after another. So I find it very hard to just sit down and relax. So that's part of it. And then I have found a team that is amazing, that are willing to and also capable of doing the same thing as I am doing, and have a board that is very supportive. And one of the main things that we have in order to accomplish those extremely abundant actions that we are taking is collaboration. So we are a team of 2.5, yes, but we're also collaborating with so many other partners around us. That includes other organizations like the Downtown BIA, Uptown BIA, the Chamber of Commerce of New West, Arts New West, the city, the city representatives, local businesses, the community, the hotels. So we couldn't do all of these that we're doing if we didn't have their help. But the first thing we did when we took over this team, after tourism had been struggling for some time and had lost credibility in the community, was showing that we were back, that we were working hard, that we had a good idea of what we were doing, and also we had all the energy to do it. So we got back the credibility from the community, and then we capacity to go and knock on doors and ask for help. At first, it was impossible. No one was even looking at tourism. So that was the first step, and now we are collaborating with everyone around us. So yes, a team of 2.5, but we are a team of hundreds when it comes to making community, and that's very important. And then we also, of course, use many tools, the traditional tools that you would use to be more efficient. I don't know, applications and platforms to follow your tasks. I don't know if I could say any brands, but doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you can name
Yeah,
brands.
like
Yeah, go ahead.
we use things like Slack, or we've tried Asana, which we've tried others. So that's very helpful. Again, we're a small team, so we don't really need that much. But we then have volunteers, we have interns, and we try to put everyone in there, so we have a good communication happening. But then also AI. So the main use we give to AI is we have a chatbot that is embedded in our website. So that chatbot helps us serve our visitors 24/7. It's not perfect, of course. It has many flaws, but we are constantly training it. So whenever we find something that could be improved, we train it on how to say it, how to approach it, and it's been amazing. Like actually, the cost that we pay for it, it's pretty affordable, especially if you compare it to other alternatives. And we wish we could hire someone 24/7. It's impossible. We're a tiny organization with a tiny budget, so we prioritize the human talent. But then when you reach your capacity limits, you have to be creative and you have to go and use other alternatives. So in nowhere we're trying to replace human beings and human talent with AI, but to complement it and to make it like an extension of our talent and our capacities. And it's been working awesome. And then on the other hand, we use different AI tools such as ChatGPT or other similar ones to just create, but more than create, to shape up things that we create ourselves. So one thing that I've always thought is that, not always because this is brand new, but one thing that I came to realize is that you cannot delegate everything to AI yet. Maybe in the future, I know it'll happen eventually, but we're not in that moment yet. What I do is, or what I think is that you should delegate as much as you can, as long as you are the expert in the subject and you're capable of supervising the outcome. If it's your words and your thoughts that are going into a prompt, and then AI is shaping it up on an email, on a paper, or a project, but it's coming from your knowledge, it's coming from your team's knowledge, and then you put it in there, and it just gives it structure, and then you are able to understand if it's well structured, if it's well integrated, or if there are flaws in it, and then you can correct them. I think it's okay. But if you're not an expert in the subject, or you don't know what you're talking about, and you're delegating it to AI, and then fully trusting it, as I said in our last interview, AI is full of shit. And sorry for the bad words, but I think it is. It says things with so much security, like so much confidence,
Yes.
that you buy it. It can tell you anything. Like, I mean, I think the best example is something that is irrefutable, like math problems. You can ask ChatGPT or any of the other alternatives some complicated math questions, and it's going to come up with a result. And a lot of times the result is going to be wrong, but it's going to put it in front of you as a right answer. So how do we do this? We have to know the answer ourselves and just have it help us present it in a better way. That when it comes to knowledge, right? And then there are many other tools that can be used with AI. We don't use them, but we could, and we see a lot of our partners using it, like hotels and other businesses, like CRM, or following up with customers and connecting with customers and all the funnel process. So even the cold calls made by an AI representative, and I think that's impressive. I think that's amazing. We don't have the need to do it because of the operations that we have, but if we were making sales, like individual sales for I don't know, even hotels, experiences, or anything like that, I'm sure we would be using that.
Yeah. No, for sure. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think every kind of organization has different use cases and different needs. I'm curious about, obviously, you're talking about using tools like ChatGPT and others and some other tools. Are you having conversations and your chatbot even, are you having conversations with your team around sort of those responsible uses and sort of that human in the loop element? Do you guys have policies around that? Like, help me understand, as the leader of your organization, how you're having those conversations with your team and to what extent there's like sort of a formalized structure around all of that.
Well, we don't have a written policy about it, but we have talked about this many times, and especially when we have new members in the team that are like in a more entry level position. For example, interns or seasonal staff that comes and works in the summer. Sometimes they have to go and create things on the computer. We've noticed that since it's like younger generation, people between, I don't know, 18 and maybe 23, the majority of them, they are very prone to use AI, which is great. But then we have this conversation, like use it as a tool, but don't fully trust it because we've seen so many like bad results with that. And or some people that just want AI to do everything because they heard that it's capable of doing everything, and not yet. It will be, but not yet, right? So we do have those conversations quite often, and we just try to keep it as a tool, but don't hand it out completely to it.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I'm curious also about your website chatbot and your experience there. I've heard from others that talk about the fact that, since we put a website chatbot, we're now actually having almost like a two-way conversation with our end users and sort of starting to, you see what queries people put out there or what questions they're asking and how the chatbot responds. And, that actually from what, the conversations I've had is like that number one helps you understand different ways that people ask the question because sometimes when we like go to like Google search results or something, it doesn't really give us all of the context as much as a chatbot does, but also it helps us understand how the chatbot's responding and maybe where it's getting information from. So has there been a lot of learning from you in terms of on both sides in terms of the use of the chatbot and how people are interacting with it?
Yes, absolutely. Maybe the main differences that we have noticed, as opposed to not having a chatbot, would be one, if people go and search on our website, it's a one-way source of information, right? So they go, they search for something, and they're going to see whatever they click on, and that's it. And here we have a ping pong. It goes back and forth, and it can be more detailed and going around things and researching. So even if I assume people know it's AI, they probably do, but they engage in those conversations. Sometimes they even laugh or, well, ha ha ha, and
Yeah, yeah.
stuff like that. And it's interesting because I suppose we're giving it a more human touch than just a website, even if even if they know it's not a person, which I suppose they are aware of. And if not, it means that it's doing a great job, right? And also it's different having a chatbot than just having the information because then we go into other subjects. What do you think would be better for X? So it's not just about what's out there, but in my case, I'm bringing my family and I have a senior traveler coming with me. Where do you recommend that I take them? Sometimes we don't have enough information on the website for the chatbot to respond to that. And then we learn that we need to have that information. Or sometimes they wouldn't have been able to find it just clicking, but then the chatbot knows where to source it and brings it to them. So again, like the chatbot and we ourselves have so much to learn, but we're on that process. So nothing happens overnight, and it's just very interesting to see how this is developing. And we also have sometimes requests about making a connection with someone, organizing an event, or lost items. So it's a very different interaction than what they would have just with a website.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's interesting. I think that the point you raised there about the fact that sometimes the chatbot doesn't have the information, that's a very valuable thing for a destination to sort of understand, right? Because you build a website, you can't really anticipate every question that's going to come in. And I think over time, chatbots are actually going to make destinations better in terms of, what are some of those questions. Some of them might be, edge case and maybe not stuff that you would put on your website, but some of it might be, oh, geez, we're missing this information, or hey, we can help this be more robust, this, information suite here or whatever, right? So I think it's such an interesting world we're in because these chatbots give us the like a window into the minds of our end users and help us really understand what types of things they might be asking, what are the common things, right? So it's this really I like to tell people to think about these AI chatbots on your websites as really almost like a two-way street, right? So it's not just about sort of you communicating, but it's also you understanding, right? So that's awesome. In terms of your, let's just say your ChatGPT use, are you guys like what types of things are you using tools like ChatGPT for? Is it sort of primarily content creation? Are you using it for strategy development, reporting? Can you help me understand kind of where some of your favorite use cases come from?
It goes everywhere. I think a lot of the things we work on, we run it through ChatGPT. So just to try to see if we're missing something, for example. So again, we don't get the strategy from ChatGPT. It's our strategy, but then we put it in there, and then maybe the order ChatGPT suggests could be different. And if it makes sense, we go that way. If it makes sense, like again, we're the
Yeah.
experts, not
Yeah.
ChatGPT. So, but we listen to it. So it's interesting to have that extra staff member in the team that can just like give educated opinions on something.
Right.
So yeah, we run pretty much like from emails to projects to blog posts. I don't know. Everything runs through ChatGPT, even to find like flaws in grammar or whatever, right? But at the end, we have the last word.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's absolutely. I always tell people, AI should be where your starting point is, or can be a good starting point, but shouldn't be the ending point, right? So, to your point, the human actually has to be in the loop and has to be the final decision maker on sort of what comes out and how it comes out and make sure it's aligned with your brand and all those types of things, right? So, but it's such a helpful starting point if you kind of, to your point, put in a document and say, what are we missing? Help us think about this differently, come out, that's super, super useful, right?
I think a good example of how we use it in a simpler way would be Grammarly. So
Mm.
Grammarly is a kind of AI. It's an AI tool. For those of you who don't know, it's an AI tool that checks your text and proposes improvements on writing, on grammar, etc. Even the style of the writing. Grammarly is always going to give you suggestions on how to improve your text, but that doesn't mean that it's right. Sometimes it makes more sense for Grammarly to say it in a way, but maybe you're not expressing what you want if you go the Grammarly way. And you just need to say, no, I don't agree with this one, and I'm going to continue and go my own way. Right?
Yeah.
So it happens a lot. We have Grammarly installed in the computers here, and it just gives us suggestions suddenly without us even asking. And sometimes we listen to it, and sometimes it's just like, nope, that doesn't really have what I want in there, you know. And I think it's the same. That's a very simple example. It's just the writing, but the same with any project. Like you want to see something in that project, and maybe ChatGPT is suggesting something completely different. So it's out.
Exactly. No, that's fantastic. Tell me a little bit about your. I'm going to kind of get right to the point here, but the number one thing I hear from a lot of DMOs, specifically in BC, but really all around everywhere, is you spend a lot of time on reporting. And obviously, you mentioned the MRDT tax, and so obviously you're reporting on that. I would imagine you have some grants you're reporting on, and so is that one of your biggest pain points currently as an executive director of a sort of a small team? Is just the amount of time you have to spend on reporting. Question number one. Question number two, have you explored the use of AI tools to help support that process?
So to question number one, yes, we spend so much time on reporting for every board meeting for the MRDT visitor center numbers and statistics, and we're about to start our new data gathering system made by us. So yes, that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of human hours. But I'm not sure we're ready to move to AI to that because we are the ones doing the input on those reports. So we have to gather information from so many sources that go from like our calendars, like what did we do, our social media, who did we meet with, what did we agree on, what MOUs new, what new MOUs we have, etc., etc. So I hope we can get to that point where we can just tell AI like, please go to all my email calendar information, social media, and tell me what I have done the last month and put in a report and make it comply with whatever I've been asked for the MRDT or for this and that. So far, we're not using it. I mean, just to give it structure, but
Mm.
that's it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's, by the way, what I'm going to be building here in the next, starting soon. So
Well,
I hope
please
to have
reach
a
out.
solution for everybody. So I'll talk to you separately about that. But yeah, no, it's the number one thing I hear. And so, the challenge right now with tools like ChatGPT or what I will call out of the box AI is that to your point is all of these different places you would get, you have to sort of get the data from, they don't talk, right? And so it still would be a manual process to sort of grab all that data from all these different places and and sort of feed it into the system, and then it'd be a lot of work, right? And so I think to your point is the way things are structured now, it's not there, but I'm actually planning to build a tool that's going to put all that data into one place and then automate the entire process. So to be to coming soon.
Yes. Well, if we have a small DMO prize, we would be
Yeah,
happy
yeah.
to
Oh
do
yeah,
that.
no. So everything I build. So I'm actually gonna comment on that on a couple of things because a couple things you said that sort of stand out to me is number one, you're not using AI to replace your workforce, you're using it to augment the work you do. For me, I really see in tourism the opportunity, like the problem, and not the problem, the reality in tourism is that there aren't enough people in tourism, period, everywhere, anywhere. Like this is the number one issue faced by this industry. And so we're not going to be replacing people with AI. We're actually going to be enabling people to actually do the work they want to do. And probably the work that they all, correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't join tourism to write reports. You probably joined tourism to attend meetings, to grow your community, to right, do all the things that you do, right? So I think if we can actually use AI to help take away that part of people's job that they actually, one, first of all, don't really like doing, and second of all, is very time consuming, very manual, and very error prone. That will actually allow you to be more effective in building your community, building your tourism assets, building your, right, all the things, right? So that's number one. So I don't think actually in tourism the sort of replacing people is actually that much of a thing because we just don't have enough
No,
people.
it's like transportation. You hop on the train, you hop on the car. It's you going there, just getting there
Yeah.
faster.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And then number two, it's really, I mean, sort of connecting all the data sources and making it really easy is sort of the needed thing. And so that's kind of what we're going to be doing. And so on that point, I'm wondering about, so for example, let's just talk about your calendar, right? So you attend a lot of meetings, you're reporting on all the meetings you're attending, there's outcomes of those meetings. Have you put a lot of thought and time and effort into standardization of, for example, document naming, file structure organization? You know what I mean? Like, are you guys pretty organized when it comes to that stuff?
We are on it.
You're
We are
on it.
working. It's part of the 2025 objectives because a lot of the things that we received during that transition to this new team, new board, and all of that was a bit messy. So we are trying to both make it simple and accessible and standardized, both in processes, documents, and all of that. So yes, it's important for us, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. And you know what? In fairness, almost every organization I talk to isn't there yet and would like to be more organized. So, you're not alone in that. But I only mention that because actually, what we're moving to is a world of what's called AI agents. And I think this is a really important kind of point for people to understand is that, the agents are only going to be as good as the information they have and the naming conventions they have and the file structure that they can go read and write, and it's just like a human, right? So I always talk to people about, imagine you have a new worker, and you tell that new worker, go write me an MRDT report, and if you just said go write me an MRDT report, they would never succeed, right?
Right. Yeah.
But if you had a standard operating procedure, showed them where all the files were, everything was organized nice and clean, they would be able to figure it out. It might take them a really long time, obviously, but they would
Yeah.
eventually figure it out, right? And really, we're moving to this world of these AI agents where it's the same thing, right? We're going to have all these new coworkers that are going to be AIs, and we're going to be assigning them very specific tasks, but their ability to perform those tasks is only as good as like the detail, the information, the organization, right? So it's a very important thing. I'm glad to hear that you're on it because it's the number one thing I'm talking to every tourism organization anywhere about it. Naming convention, file structure, organization, keeping old documents, archiving old documents, all that kind of stuff, right? So the more time we spend on that kind of stuff, the more ready we're going to be for this future that is coming very quickly. So
Exactly.
it's really important.
And you know what? I think small organizations like ours are an opportunity to
Yeah.
implement those pilots
Yeah.
because it's always easier to start at a small scale.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was actually the other thing I was going to comment on. So everything I do, I've always been sort of here for the little guy. I've always, the big enterprise companies and the big organizations, they have resources. They can figure all this stuff out on their own. So I'm always trying to build solutions for the small for the smaller organizations. So for me, my target, you would be an ideal target audience for me in terms of this tool. And similarly, a lot of smaller tourism operators, small resorts, independent tourism operators, those types of things. That would make me most satisfied because at the end of the day, I know that it's folks like you that are doing, to your point, to the start of this conversation, the work of 20 people with 2.5 or whatever it is, right? So,
Exactly.
if we can help you make it look like the work of 100 people, that would be an amazing win, right? And I think
Yeah.
that would make everybody in your region better.
Yeah, because we have maybe between 10 and 20% of the budget that a lot of our DMO neighbors have, and we just got to work with what we have around. So yeah, you're right.
So in terms of do you find in terms of kind of your current, when you're putting together your, say your MRDT reports or other reports, are there a lot of gaps in the data that you're working with, or is it just a matter of it's just a very manual process, like the data is all there, it's just very manual to go find it? Is that, or is
Yeah,
it
I
missing?
mean, we have all the information because
Yeah.
we are reporting on what we are doing, so it's not that bad, but it just takes time to gather everything because it's not all living in the same place. There was a huge gap when we took over because so I got the job in June and that was the time to report. So I actually had to deliver one report on the work from the previous year. I wasn't here. I actually had been on the job for like a week and had to report on the year before.
Okay.
So that was a nightmare. But that was a one-time thing. So yeah, the gap there was
And
crazy.
as you went through that process, where I mean, it sounds like probably you were sort of drinking from a fire hose, so you probably didn't have a lot of time to document processes and document how. Were you doing that as you were going, or was it a go back afterwards and start to document how you did that? Like, can you help me explain how that worked?
So it was a little bit of both. So the thing is, we didn't get a proper handout from the past ED to the current ED because there was a gap, a time gap between. So we were headless for a while. So the files were there, but no one really know where they were. So it was a lot of digging, a lot of. I'm sure that report, that MRDT report, was not complete because I'm sure we missed something, and there was no way to know it. And so yeah, we had to go and collect information and look at the files and try to put it together. And also some of the information was in place, but a lot of that was just spread around. And yeah, it was not simple.
So you are exactly that example that I gave of like the new
Yes.
employee coming in and trying to figure this out, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you know
We're also
firsthand what that was.
trying to have, for that exact reason, we are trying to have all the transition processes in place. So in case any of the team goes somewhere else, or we hope not, but gets fired, we're not planning to fire anyone. But if it happened, we need to have a smooth transition. So that's why we're working on documenting everything and having everything in a place where you can find it and easily just transfer it to the next person. So, like if I got fired, I would be willing to share the information with the next person, but you never know who's gonna be on the chair, right?
Yeah. No, and it's similar. I mean, again, like this, I think documenting processes is the most important work every organization in the world needs to be doing because, to your point, maybe it's, hey, we're going to give some of this work to an AI agent or to a tool that can help execute some of it. And by documenting the process, we can enable that tool to actually help us do the job, right? And so it's a
Exactly.
very important point that I want to make sure people are paying attention to. It's critical. I'm
One
curious.
thing where
Go
I
ahead.
was thinking, where AI is limited on the things that we're doing is on connecting with our partners. Like the human part of going out there and having a relationship with the local businesses, with the other DMOs. So it's a very good match between having this AI being able to organize information, to creating the reports, to reaching out to customers potentially as replacing some of the time that has to be used by a person to do it, and then having the people doing what we're better at, which is
Exactly.
connecting with other people.
Exactly. And quite frankly, correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience is that people in tourism love people and they're people. And so actually that's what you came to do, right? Is build community,
Exactly.
build connections, right? That's what you want to do, right? So it's the reporting and all the admin work that you have to do in between all of those meetings that sort of make the job probably more difficult,
All the
right?
super fun part
Yes,
of
exactly.
statistics, numbers, and reporting.
That's right. Yeah. A couple more questions here. I'm just curious in terms of like, what is AI a conversation you have in your community amongst your stakeholders? Obviously, you're talking to your staff. What is the flavor of the conversation if the conversation's even happening? Is this conversation coming up in meetings and in conversations with others?
It is. It is. Just yesterday we were talking about it. I'm not sure how much I can talk about this, but with one of our partners, they are deciding on which way to go regarding education. And we talked about AI, how important it is, and how to balance with students. They use, like, how can they provide the tools and the knowledge to students so they can use the AI in the best way possible. They can become expert users, so they can include it in their everyday activities and businesses and jobs and all of that. But at the same time, how to prevent AI from doing their homework. And then us having a whole generation of people who didn't do anything throughout their program, and it was AI graduating, not them. So I think it's a huge challenge. So it's one of the things that we are talking about. I think that's a major conversation to have because, again, like if you're not the expert in the subject, then you're relying on an AI tool that might be wrong or might not have the whole idea of what you're talking about. So that's one thing. Then locally, of course, the AI chat has been part of the conversations. All organizations around us are trying to use something similar. So they were interested in what we were doing and they want to do it also, not necessarily for tourism, but some of the partner organizations in town, they're trying to go that way. So yeah, I mean, it's an everyday conversation. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And are people, is there resistance? Is there excitement? Like I'd be curious kind of what the flavor of those conversations are.
So that's a very interesting question because we have people who are very excited about it and want to learn more and want to use it more. Then we have people who are resisting to it in a way that, like, I don't want to give AI my information. That's one. I don't want AI stealing my information and then using it who knows how. So, like, that's one of the trends. And then we also have, especially from the arts community, a lot of people who are not loving AI because they do feel they are being replaced by something that is generic and standardized and not. Well, art should be a form of expression for many of us. And then when AI is creating art or is creating visual representations of stuff that
Yeah.
could be considered art by some, then it's like, where do you draw the line? Where is it more important to have personal expression through art, and when it's like a commissionable piece of graphic design that could be done by AI, and then do it or not with some like a real human artist, and there's a big resistance there. Like one piece of example, back in Easter, I was literally on the bus or on the train home, and I thought about playing with words with AI. So I was like, oh, New Westminster, New Westminster. I was like, oh, I can do something with that. So I went to ChatGPT, and as I was sitting on the train, I asked it to create an image that reflected New Westminster. So a combination of New Westminster and Easter, and it just and I prompted it to include some of the very nice heritage homes that we have here in the West and some other stuff. So it created an Easter egg placed somewhere in the West with some cool art or cool images in there, and that was it. And I uploaded it to our Instagram, and that post just generated so much hate from the arts community, and that was not the intention. They were like, "Oh, why didn't you commission this to a local artist, or why didn't you hire someone?" It would have been so simple just to ask a kid in school to do it instead of having AI doing it, and then I was really questioning myself, like, did I do something wrong? And then on the one hand, I was thinking, okay, if I didn't do this, we were not going to hire anyone to do it because I was just playing with AI. It was just like something fun that came to my head and I decided to do it. We didn't need that design, so there's no way, even if we had the budget, that we would have gone out to a human artist and commission it. Because I was literally on my way home and I was like, oh, what if I do this? As you could just I don't know, like tweet something funny or whatever. And then I even checked with our local arts organization on their position on this, and they were like, okay, if you were arts New Westminster, maybe it would have been wrong, but you're tourism, so
Right.
your goal is not to promote the arts. I mean, we do it, and we're happy to
Sure.
do it, but that's not part of our mandate. And so I think it's a fine line. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this one. I think we're going to be seeing it more and more and more. So on the one hand, it's unavoidable, even if there are a lot of people resisting for it to happen. We have to have considerations with the arts community, yes, but also what happens when it's something that you wouldn't have hired someone to do it in the other alternative, right? So
Yeah. I love
there you
that
go. Like,
example, honestly.
yeah,
Honestly, I love that example a lot because I think it's an example of kind of what we're going to be experiencing over the next few years as we sort of, as a society, fumble our way through this challenge, right? This is a challenge. This is a major, major societal challenge. And we have to decide as a society together where those lines are and how to navigate all of these conversations and how to, right? And so like, you kind of that's a great example of you just had sort of a firsthand experience and your intentions weren't anything kind of, it wasn't, hey, we're going to replace our graphic designers and we're never going to hire a designer again. Like that's not your intention, right? But it was, hey, I'm just playing around, trying something, put it out there, and then you got a reaction. We actually similarly, I live in Calgary, right next to the Calgary Farmers Market, and they had put out a campaign that had some AI generated images as part of the campaign, but they actually partnered with a local agency, so they like it wasn't just pure AI. It was sort of AI generated images with a graphic designer that sort of put context and background on it and sort of worked with those images. And the community went crazy. Like they really got lit up pretty bad, and it was a really big learning experience for them. And they ended up defending, because everybody was like, why wouldn't you use a local agency? And it's like, well, we did actually. And so I actually reached out to them and had a conversation with them about it. And I said, okay, well, there's probably some, and this is, maybe some advice for you as well, as that's where having written responsible AI use policies and principles might be a handy thing, right? It's like, hey, you know what, we always defer to human artists when possible. That's always our preference. However, here's the places where we might use AI generated sort of, artwork, art, if you will. I don't even know if we want to call it art, but images or whatever, right? So
yeah,
I think and then having some even, I would recommend for, you know, as a DMO and as a community leader, even just trying to lead some conversations about these things and sort of, what I mean, like proactively
yeah,
would be kind of a value. Now, I know you're very busy and you have a lot of things to do, so it's challenging. But these are conversations we need to have as a society. Is kind of what I'm trying to get to, and we need to try to have transparent, open conversations that aren't um, sort of started from a place of anger, but more of a trying to understand, right? And I think that's how we get there together. And I had a similar situation where somebody kind of got mad at me for something that we did with respect to AI, and I actually have responsible AI policies and principles on my website, and sort of pointed to them to those policies and said, look, this is our policy. Happy to have a conversation about it, but this is kind of the policy we have today and where we are, and then they understood. And similarly, I had a conversation because I do a lot of AI education where actually we had a company we were going through an AI adoption process, and it was the graphic designers that were most resistant to using AI in that organization. And basically, they said, their response to a survey we did internally was, if we start using AI as an organization, we're leaving this organization. And obviously, the employer got pretty freaked out about that, or upset, concerned about that. And so
yeah.
then, but that was a useful starting point for me to understand where they were coming from. And when I started to do the workshops and started to go through the training, they they understood then that the organization wasn't planning to use AI to replace them. And we started talking about different ways that AI can help them. And so, as an example, is okay, what if actually, we used AI to give you better guidance on what to actually design for us? Because I said, tell me about some of the challenges you face as a graphic designer, and it's like, well, we get instructions that are half thought out, and they don't answer all the questions, and we never have enough information to actually like design the thing right the first time, and then there's a lot of back and forth. And so I said, well, what if we used AI to help up front to get the information better, so that you can have everything you need to do that. And they were like, oh, well, if we used AI like that, that would be amazing, right? And so they became bought in because they understood that we weren't actually trying to replace them. We were actually trying to help them, right? And so again, some of this is misunderstanding. Some of this is legitimate in terms of there could be some people out there trying to replace artists and graphic designers, but I don't think
Yeah,
that's
of
the
course, like
majority of people.
anything is just black or white,
Yeah,
It's many shades of gray.
that's
So,
right.
yeah, I even think that most of the artists that oppose people using AI to create art, they might use AI to create text.
Right.
I'm sure not all of them, because I've heard of some people that are like just trying to be consistent with what they say, and which I respect a lot. Like if they are like, I'm not okay with people using AI to do what I do, and I won't use AI at all, so I can have this position, right? So I think that's respectable. I don't share that point of view, of course, but I think that's respectable. But then how can you say, like, don't use AI to create graphic design or graphic images, but I go and use AI to create knowledge in a way? Or so where do you draw the line? It's very difficult to know. So what I think it's unavoidable. It's going to happen. So we can fight it, we can be against it, or we can learn how to better use it as a tool and to coexist with it. And also, I think it's very important that as a society and as a community and as a business and tourism part of the world, we try to understand where the added value falls on having human, like real humans, and having real artists, because there's added value to it.
Mm.
It won't be in every expression made by humans, as not every expression made by AI would be terrible. So, like, which things can be put in the AI realm, and which should be kept in the human part, and then those should those should acquire more value just by being made by human people or
Yeah.
human.
Yeah. And I think that's probably where this is going to end up is that people, like at the end of the day, I think people will always value human creation, human creativity, human innovation more than anything else. I just think that this is going to be the nature of humans. And we're probably going to end up there, but I think it's going to be maybe a little messy on the way on the way there, right? So, it's good learnings, and I think being open, being transparent. I think from what I know of you is I think that's how you've succeeded is by being a builder and being open and transparent and inclusive and all the things. And I think that's the path. That's the path to get there. So I want to thank you for certainly for being that guy and for the great work you do in your community and for being a guest on our podcast today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, it was a very nice conversation, Peter, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome.